Hi everybody, I'm Chef Laura. Thank you for being with me today. We are going to make some pretzels right now. One of the favorite things to make at Oui Chef with my kids. They just love it and love eating them after. It's an all good thing. So in my bowl, I have 5 cups of bread flour. Bread flour is preferred for this recipe, and you should be able to find it in the flour section with all your other flours. But if you don't have bread flour and you can't find it, all-purpose flour will get the job done. I also here have 1.5 cups of milk. I have warmed this milk up because we are going to be using yeast in our recipe. We're going to be using dry yeast in our recipe, and more specifically 2 1/4 teaspoons of dry yeast. And right now we need to consider that this dry yeast is asleep, and we need to wake this yeast up so it can do its job by creating gases so that our bread dough rises, and then also so our dough rises in the oven and our pretzels poof up, right? So we need to wake our yeast up, and to do that we need a warm liquid, which in this case will be our milk, and then the yeast also likes a little bit of sugar, and there is naturally sugar in milk, so we don't need to necessarily add sugar to this. If I was making pizza dough, it would be water and some sugar. But in this case, the milk takes care of the sugar, and I've warmed it up. So I'm gonna pour my yeast into my milk, and I'm going to give it a little stir. And then we're just gonna let it sit for a little bit. I'm wanting to get all that yeast off next. Okay, we're just gonna let it sit for a little bit, and we're gonna let that yeast wake up. It's just like most of us need to lay in bed for a few minutes in the morning when we wake up. Our yeast needs a little bit of time to wake up too. So in the meantime, we are going to add to our bread flour, we're going to add some butter. Now I microwave this butter for just about, I don't know, it takes about 10 to 15 seconds depending on what stage you're taking your butter from, how cold it is. But we do want this butter to be soft so that it mixes in with into our dough easily. So it just should be, when you press on it, your finger should just smush right in there. It should not be melted though. I also have some salt. This is 2 3/4 teaspoons of salt. Salt is going to help our dough taste, or our pretzels and our dough, but our pretzels taste delicious. It also helps keep our yeast from going crazy. It's kind of like the crossing guard at school, making sure everybody slows down and doesn't go crazy. So this is what our salt's doing. It's kind of monitoring our yeast. So I'm going to now take our milk and yeast mixture. I'm going to pour it into my flour mixture. This is a dough hook. This is the attachment you need to be using on your KitchenAid. You can also mix this by hand. Put all this into a bowl and mix it by hand if you do not have a KitchenAid. It will take you longer than what is going to take my KitchenAid to mix this, but you can absolutely mix this by hand. So don't see this and think, oh my gosh, I don't have this machine, I can't make this dough. Get your hands in there. They're gonna be goopy for a while. It's gonna take a little bit of muscle and work for you to get it done, but you absolutely can get it done. So now I'm gonna turn my mixer on, and we're gonna let this mix up. Now, sometimes you might need to add a little bit of water to this if it's not coming together, but we're gonna give this a sec to see, and we'll make that call in just a few minutes. It doesn't come together right away. This is a firm dough, so it's not a super soft dough. So don't think that that's wrong. I'll show you once it's all mixed, but it's a firm dough, so it's gonna take a little bit longer for all the ingredients to mix together. And we need to use patience here. So I wanna show you this. So it's still kind of crumbly in pieces, and I'd like it to be coming together a little bit more. So what I'm gonna do is just add about a tablespoon of some warm water at this point, and I'm just eyeballing it, but I'm being careful. You can go from the wrong thing to another wrong thing very quickly if you add too much liquid. So you really want to add those extra additions of liquid in very small increments. Now we're gonna let this go for a little bit and let the gluten develop. So just because your dough has come together in the bowl doesn't mean that it's done. We still need to give it a little bit of time. Our dough is done. And I wanted to just show you quick the technique if you were to do this dough by hand for kneading. You'd press down on your dough, you'd fold it and press again. And just keep working around, folding and pressing, until that dough came together and was nice and smooth. Okay, so now we need to let this rise for, this might take up to an hour and a half to rise because it's kind of a firmer dough. You want to put it in a warm place in your house, but not the oven unless you have a proofing option on your oven. My warmest place in here is just sitting on top of my oven. So I'm gonna put some plastic wrap over the top so it doesn't dry out, and I'm going to set it in the warmest place in my shop. That is not the oven, and we're gonna let it just rise for a while. Our dough has been proofing for about a good hour and a half and has doubled in size. So I'm going to get it out of my mixing bowl. And then I want you to cut these in roughly pieces approximately the same size. So to do that, I'm gonna kind of roll my dough into a log. And then I'm just gonna cut pieces from there that, again, are roughly the same size. Now, if you have a kitchen scale, you could weigh 100-gram pieces. I think that's a good size for a pretzel, so 100-gram pieces. But otherwise, just cut pieces that are roughly the same size. The world will not be ending over pieces being a little bit different. And so I'm using a bench knife or a bowl scraper to do this, but you can just use a regular knife if you don't have one of these bowl scrapers. Okay, so that is good. So let's see, how many did I get? I got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. Ooh, that's not good. To get 13, let's get that to 14. Not that I'm superstitious or anything, but that just doesn't sit well with me. So anyways, okay, now we're gonna roll these. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make our hand into kind of a spider shape, and we're gonna roll these into a ball. I put my hand over the top, I'm pressing on the dough with this part of my hand, and I'm gonna roll these into balls. Now let's be honest, however you can get it into a ball, we're gonna start by getting these into balls. We are going to start rolling our dough now into snakes. So we roll them first into balls. They're all underneath here. This is an apron. You want to use an apron or a kitchen towel or something like that so that they don't dry out, okay? So we're gonna start rolling. And even with that towel, they might, as you're rolling, and especially kiddos, as you're rolling, they might start drying out. So I have a little cup of water next to me. I'm literally going to take drops. I just put the tiniest bit on my fingertips, rub it on my hands, the tiniest bit, drops. And then it just helps get some friction with the dough and our table, and we're able to roll. So you can see I'm starting in the middle and I'm moving my hands to the ends of my dough as I roll a nice thin snake of dough. Now what I don't want to see is snakes of dough that look like they just ate a pig for lunch. So you have kind of a bump in the middle where the snake's lunch is sitting, okay? So we're gonna try not to do that. So this is good. If your dough keeps kind of springing back as you roll it and then it springs back, just set it aside for a sec, set it in front of you, let it rest for a couple minutes, and then start at it again. And it should what you're doing is relaxing the gluten, and it should get a lot better after it's had a chance to rest. So once you have rolled all your balls of dough into snakes, I'm gonna show you how you're gonna create your pretzel. The first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna make a U. So facing with it towards you, you're gonna make a U shape. Then you're gonna take the ends, you're gonna cross them over, okay? So let me kind of cross them over like so. So we have the two ends. So the ends are crossed over, then we're gonna take them and we're gonna cross them again so it makes a twist. You kind of pick that up. So it creates that little twist there with the ends hanging down, okay? Then we're gonna take those ends and we're gonna bring them towards the base of our pretzel and we're gonna press down into our pretzel. So we brought those ends down to the base, press them in, and sometimes you need to pull up these little loops a little bit, but you get the shape of your pretzel. So let's do that one more time. Let me just give this guy another little roll. Okay, so we start with a U and we cross our ends over, okay? So again, with the ends crossed over. Then we're gonna cross them again, so we end up with a little twist. We grab these ends, we pull them to the base of our pretzel, we press in firmly with our fingers, and then we kind of pull those little loops apart at the top, and we have a nice pretzel shape. If your kids are having trouble making the actual pretzel shape and getting it rolled long enough, don't fret, you can actually also just do pretzel sticks. So instead of keeping rolling this and going and rolling this into a long snake, just stop and make a little pretzel stick. That's a totally legal maneuver. We don't want any tears forming over pretzels because pretzels are awesome and delicious. So if you stop and you make pretzel sticks, that's totally great. So again, just roll for a little bit, stop, and you have a pretzel stick. After all your pretzels have been rolled into either pretzel sticks or the traditional pretzel shape, we are going to cook them twice. So first we're gonna boil them, then they're gonna go in the oven. So what we need before we start boiling is we need some egg wash. This we're gonna brush over our pretzels before they go into the oven. So this is 1 egg with 1 tablespoon of water in a dish, and then I'm just gonna mix that up until it's thoroughly combined. We also need some salt. So I like a coarser grain salt. I actually have a little thing of sea salt here, a little freshly ground sea salt to go on my pretzels. Some kids don't like salt on their pretzels, and that's a-okay too. So we have our egg wash and our salt. We have a pastry brush for brushing our egg wash onto our pretzels. In my pot on my stove, I have some boiling water. I have 8 cups of boiling water with ½ a cup of baking soda. So it's a lot of baking soda. What that baking soda does is it gives our dough that pretzel-y flavor, that distinct flavor that pretzels have, and it also gives it that richer brown color that we get from pretzels. It's a different brown than with other doughs. So I also have a baking tray with a silicone baking sheet on it. These are best. I have found that even with a very, very thoroughly greased piece of parchment, the pretzels do still stick a bit. So if you have a silicone baking sheet, I would absolutely use it. Okay, so the first thing we are going to do is we are going to take our pretzels. I'm going to put them into the strainer. And I have 2 in here right now. I'm gonna lower them into my boiling water, and then I'm gonna release them in there. The other way to do this is very, very carefully as we put our hand towards the water. I am gently going to release that into my water. We are going to boil these for 1 minute. So you either set the alarm on your clock, your timer on your, set the timer on your phone, or I have an old-fashioned clock on my wall that I make the kids watch the second hand. So we're gonna do this, we're gonna let this go for a minute. You don't need to flip them or anything like that, they just need to boil for 1 minute. And depending on what size pot you have, depends on how many pretzels you can do at a time. 3 is about the max for my pot. My minute is up, and I'm going to carefully fish my pretzels out of my boiling water. So I scoop, I let it drain for a sec, give it a little shimmy to get all that excess water out of there, and then gently lay it on my tray. Older kids can do this, younger kids obviously not so much. This tool I'm using is called a spider because it looks like a spider web. So once I have my pretzels out of the boiling water, I'm gonna take my egg wash and I'm carefully gonna brush it all over my pretzel. Now, I don't want to have scrambled eggs cooked on my pretzel. So we are only doing a nice layer of egg wash on the pretzel. Okay, we don't want puddles of egg wash next to our pretzel. So just a nice layer of egg wash on there. And then I'm gonna give these a nice twist of salt. And into a 450-degree oven, these are going to go. These take about 10 to 15 minutes depending on your oven. I know I always say that, but they are done when they are done. This is a professional convection oven. It's gonna cook a lot faster than my just home oven at home. So what takes me 10 minutes here could take me up to 20 minutes at home sometimes. So you just gotta see, but it is done when it's done, anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes. I wanted to show you the final pretzel. So here it is. So it has a nice rich brown color from that baking soda, as well as our egg wash that we put on here. You know, obviously sometimes kids don't like things that are too brown. They think they are burnt even though they are not. So if you want to bake them a little less, that's no problem at all. I just want them to enjoy them. So however that turns out to be, that is good with me. Thank you for being with me again today for pretzel making, and I look forward to having you with me next time. Bye-bye.